Hello.
It's hello.
Hello. Hello.
Hello there.
Special thanks to Own a Saber for sponsoring our 90,000 subscriber lightsaber giveaway. All the details in the pinned comment down below. Our story begins inside the throne room that once belonged to the Radiant Duchess Satine. Bo-Katan, Rex, and Jesse had just left the room, and silence stood between Maul and Ahsoka. It was their second interaction ever, and there was already tension in the room. Maul talked to her about justice and how the current system was bound to fall. Sidious was in the shadows, working, and he would reveal himself soon. Ahsoka, while not fully on board with the Jedi, didn't want the Sith to rise. She suggested that they tell the Jedi so they could save the Republic. Maul went into a tirade about how the Republic already was failed, and how there was no justice, no law, no order except the one that would replace it. Maul's madness had a hint of truth to it, and despite his efforts to take Palpatine's prize student from him, his end goal was to stop Palpatine himself. Maul looked up with a glory to his voice, telling her that the time of the Jedi has come. There was no one to defeat Sidious. Maul slowed down. He looked at Ahsoka and told her that they could defeat him. Ahsoka stopped. The echoes of explosions bouncing outside the walls left a stillness inside the throne room. She looked at Maul, and his hand raised as he told her that every choice she has ever made led her to this moment. They looked at each other, silently. Ahsoka pondered over the words said by Maul. Her mind crossed over from all the people she cared about inside the Jedi Order. She didn't want them to suffer. She thought of Plo Koon, Obi-Wan, Tera Sinube, and the likes of countless others. She thought that maybe something could be done to save them. Did Maul know who Sidious was? Surely he was someone working in the shadows, but who else could he be? Before she could complete her thoughts, an explosion blasted through the glass next to them. Ahsoka looked down and told Maul that she would join him, but she had just one question to ask. Maul told her that all she had to do was ask. Ahsoka asked what he wanted with Anakin Skywalker. Maul's breath trembled as he told Ahsoka that he was the key to everything. Ahsoka questioned again, wondering if it was to bring balance to the Force. Maul paused. He looked over at Ahsoka and told her to destroy it. Maul's voice stiffened as he told her that Anakin was meant to be Sidious's new apprentice, having been groomed for it. Ahsoka was so taken aback, telling Maul that he was lying, and he told her that quite the contrary was true. This battle of Mandalore was orchestrated to bring Skywalker to the planet. Maul wanted to deprive Sidious of his prized pupil. Ahsoka's anger began to rise, but she stopped herself. Instead of doing something aggressive, perhaps he had more to offer on the subject. She asked how that was at all possible, and Maul explained that he understood how his master worked. Dooku was just like him, serving Sidious until Sidious got what he wanted. She had a hard time understanding, but Maul went a step further. He told Ahsoka that no matter his position in the galaxy, Sidious was always 3 steps ahead. Maul, earlier in the Clone Wars, alluded to knowledge of the war happening in the Grand Plan. However, he wasn't fully privy to everything. Sidious kept him as an attack dog. His only purpose in life was to do Sidious's bidding. The same went for Dooku, and while Maul assumed Dooku was just as dumb, he was the same. Maul told Ahsoka that Anakin Skywalker was perfect, taught everything by the Jedi, and a way to undo everything they were. Ahsoka thought on it for a moment. Her anger subsided, and she realized that there was more to this than she initially realized. She asked what Maul had planned, and he told her that Sidious would reveal himself soon. They had to be ready for when he did. Ahsoka asked about Anakin and the rest of the Jedi. He told her that they could not intervene. Ahsoka was upset with this. She didn't like the idea of just abandoning her brother to a fate, but what could she do? Fight Maul? The temptation was there, but if they could potentially stop the Sith before any of this happened, then it would be fine, right? Truthfully, that's what Ahsoka was banking on. She believed she could beat Maul, but she also believed that a better use of her time was agreeing to be allies for a moment before they split up. But why did Maul think Ahsoka would fit that mold? Clearly she had some sort of grit that would be useful. Perhaps Maul saw her as more powerful than Savage, or simply more skilled. All Maul knew is that he wasn't a match for Sidious on his own, especially with his missing legs. He didn't frown upon himself, but he was being realistic with the expectations against a man like Sidious. Maul told Ahsoka to come with him. Ahsoka stopped. She looked out at the battle, and he told her that her friends would be fine. Ahsoka looked back with confusion, and Maul just smiled. He told her that the Mandalorians were more of a burden than anything else. The Republic presence would wipe them out. They were far too rebellious to help him grow his empire. She didn't know what he meant, and he didn't care to expand upon it. Maul saw a void here. If the Republic fell, then whatever replaced it would allow him to grow an empire of his own. He could cultivate the minds of those in the Outer Rim to build a great criminal empire, one larger than the Nile or the Hutts. Maul didn't care about going into detail with Ahsoka, he just told her that her allies would crush the Mandalorians while they went to the core. Maul knew that Sidious was on Coruscant, but where? That was unknown. The tragedy of being Maul is that he grew up a slave to the Sith. However, his knowledge on their dealings were never given. He was simply told to be quiet and do what he was told. If he didn't, he was tortured. The trip from Mandalore to Coruscant was as quiet as could be. Ahsoka tried to contact Anakin, but the transmissions weren't going through. This was an illusion. The communications were being blocked by Maul. He didn't believe that the Republic should be saved. He wanted the Jedi gone, and if he could accomplish both at the same time, then he could make out like a bandit. Plus, there was no reason for the Jedi to know anything of what was happening. Before they got remotely close to Coruscant, they could both feel a terrible change through the Force. It was horrible, and it echoed out across the galaxy. Both Maul and Ahsoka felt it at the same time. It didn't help that Mandalore was so far away from Coruscant, but they could feel death, pain, and suffering. Maul tried to understand what it was, and then he realized what had happened. Ahsoka didn't piece everything together as quickly, but she didn't have the whole story like Maul did. While Maul didn't either, he had pieces to put together to figure it out. He didn't know Sidious was Palpatine, so he had to assume that Sidious was manipulating Dooku to do his bidding, maybe even manipulating the Chancellor of the Republic. Maul knew that there was a war meant to divide the galaxy and thrust the Jedi into a position of struggle. Of course, after that, Maul didn't know, but he did now. Or at least he thought he knew. He told Ahsoka that Sidious likely turned the clones against the Jedi. It was brilliant, and it only went to prove how intelligent his master was. If he could turn the entire clone army against the Jedi, he had surely wiped out most of them, if not all of them. There was a moment of silence that sat between the two of them. Maul felt some pride and excitement over what had happened. He was giddy over the success of this plan. He wasn't happy for Palpatine's victory, but he was happy for the Jedi's failure. They were his natural enemy, at least as far as he was aware. Ahsoka, on the other hand, stood in silence and looked out the window into hyperspace passing by. She could hear Anakin calling out in desperation for what seemed to be help. She could feel the death of Plo Koon, and it rattled her to her core. They were close to the core worlds, and both of these events were just happening systems away from each other. Plo was on Cato Nemodia, not far away from there was Coruscant. Maul could see the stillness in Ahsoka, and left her to be on her own. He knew that despite his happiness over the failure of the Jedi, he couldn't push her away from being his ally. He just needed her for destroying Sidious. After that, they could go their own separate ways. For now, he had to just focus on giving her her space. When they eventually arrived on Coruscant, it was sunrise. When their ship entered the atmosphere, there was smoke clouding the sky. It was dark enough where the sun hadn't fully crept over the horizon yet, and both Maul and Ahsoka looked at the Jedi Temple. It was a source of all the smoke etching itself across the skyline. Maul had the ship go away from the temple. Ahsoka tried to stop him, but he put his hand up and looked her dead in the eyes and told her to remember what he said on Mandalore. The time for the Jedi has come. He said that they would survive by being smart, not by being martyrs. Ahsoka bit her lip. She wanted to retaliate, but if they stopped Sidious, then it would put an end to all of this. She couldn't believe she trusted him. She should have fought him on Mandalore. Surely the outcome would have been resolved by now, but of course it wasn't. She had one choice now: stick with the actions she made. She had to live with them, and seemingly so did the Jedi Order and the rest of the galaxy. She had to hope that Obi-Wan would survive, with Anakin at the very least. Maul had a bunch of locations that belonged to Sidious. They were layers that he used to cultivate the dark side of the Force. Maul knew that with Ahsoka by his side, they could defeat the Sith Lord. He told Ahsoka that she had to shake her mind of what was going on and be at her best. They had to keep each other safe so they could emerge victorious against Sidious. Afterwards, they could continue being allies or go their own separate ways. Ahsoka nodded her head, and the two of them waited until they arrived at the first location. Obviously, this lair had been abandoned. There were still statues of Plagueis inside of it, and his throne, despite being cut up with a lightsaber, still stood. Maul thought of the other locations, and they traveled to each and every single one of them. The last one they went to was in the industrial sector of Coruscant. Maul and Ahsoka arrived to their dismay. Despite Sidious not being there, this clearly was not abandoned like the other locations. Maul and Ahsoka kept together just in case they were wrong about Sidious not being here. But as they walked through the lair, they found a number of plans. These were things not even Dooku was privy to. Sidious had plans for something called Tantus, or some facility built into a mountain. There was also something for Jakku, and another place called Exegol. What was the Sith Lord planning? While Ahsoka was appalled, Maul couldn't help but mutter to himself how brilliant this was. Sidious was always a genius, but he was planning for his retirement, it seemed like. This was 60 years worth of building an empire. He knew how he would rule the galaxy forever, even if he failed. Maul stopped his giddy mutter when he came across plans for cloning. He realized how deep the plot really went, how brilliant his master truly was, because Sidious planned on never dying and never being killed. Maul stumbled back and his hands trembled. He didn't know how far along this process his master was, especially with the clone army already built. At the moment, Maul understood this as Sidious having already figured out the cloning process. It terrified him. Perhaps he was wrong to avoid warning the Jedi. While the Jedi were a pain to deal with, they would have been good to mitigate this, not to mention adding Skywalker into the mix. By the time the two of them left the lair, it was midday, and Ahsoka told Maul that instead of looking for Sidious where they expected him to be, they needed to figure out where Anakin was. Maybe this was a trap, but Maul did agree. He knew that he couldn't take on Sidious alone, and without Ahsoka helping him, there was no chance that they could legitimately stop both Skywalker and Sidious together. Ahsoka took Maul to Padme's residence. When they arrived, Ahsoka ran out and found Padme. She was very upset. When she saw Ahsoka, she gave her a massive hug and told her how happy she was to see her. Ahsoka asked what was wrong, and Padme told her that it was nothing. She was just glad to see that she was alright. Ahsoka told Padme that she was worried about Anakin. Padme noted that Anakin had said a word about Ahsoka for whatever reason. She told Ahsoka that he went to Mustafar to end the war. Ahsoka asked what that meant, and Padme said that it was a mission by the Chancellor. Maul was listening from inside the ship without making himself visible. He caught on to the World Chancellor, and then everything clicked for him. Ahsoka asked what happened, and Padme repeated everything Anakin said to her. The Jedi tried to assassinate the Chancellor, and he saved him. Ahsoka was then taken aback, but the longer she thought about it, the more it made sense. Anakin was told by the Council to spy on Palpatine, and then they wanted to just kill him? Perhaps Maul was right about the Jedi Order. Ahsoka thanked Padme and told her that she had to go, and she wished that Padme stay safe. Padme wished the same for Ahsoka as she got back into the vessel and took off. Maul was pacing around mumbling to himself again, and he told Ahsoka that Sidious was brilliant. Ahsoka didn't catch it until Maul told her that Sidious was Palpatine, and Palpatine was Sidious. Ahsoka said it. Wait, it could be. Ahsoka caught on to everything that happened in Anakin's life. The way Maul described the grooming of Anakin Skywalker made sense now. If Palpatine was a Sith Lord, it would explain his relationship with Anakin, why he was always pushing Skywalker away from the Order. Ahsoka told Maul that Anakin was on Mustafar. Maul muttered to himself, something inaudible, and then he spoke up, telling Ahsoka the time to strike was now. Ahsoka stopped. She told him that she couldn't go to fight Palpatine until she did something. Maul rolled his eyes and asked what it was. Ahsoka wanted to go to the temple to make sure it wasn't transmitting a code to request the Jedi back to the temple. If Anakin was serving the Sith Lord, which Ahsoka didn't truly believe at the moment, then he could have tricked the Jedi into returning to the temple to be killed. Turns out that Obi-Wan and Yoda were already 3 steps ahead of Maul and Ahsoka. Kenobi and Yoda shut off the transmitter inside the temple, and it was replaced by a message sent out by Obi-Wan. Turns out Obi-Wan had visited Padme just moments before Ahsoka got there. Padme was a little distressed by the whole thing, but she decided she needed to go to Mustafar to find Anakin. She didn't mention Obi-Wan to Ahsoka. Ahsoka and Maul weren't paying attention, but Palpatine announced the change from Republic into an Empire while they were out searching his lairs. They would have found out a lot earlier if they had, but Maul told Ahsoka they needed to get to the Senate building immediately. They had to do it before Anakin returned, and they had to do it before Sidious went anywhere. Ahsoka agreed, and they went to the Senate building. Upon their arrival, Ahsoka noted that something felt off. They trotted along the corridors until they saw a little green life form. Yoda turned to them and questioned this alliance. He asked how they got here, and Ahsoka asked what he was doing here. Yoda told him that he was here to destroy the Sith. Maul suggested another temporary alliance. Yoda nodded his head. Ahsoka looked at them and immediately questioned why the Jedi tried to overthrow Palpatine. Yoda was beyond confused and then asked if she really thought the Jedi would risk everything for that. They were trying to protect the galaxy from the Sith Lord. Truthfully, Maul was confused by her line of thinking as well, and then she decided that maybe Padme had been lied to and perhaps her brother wasn't as good of a man as she once thought. She did see the interior of the temple, and the lightsaber wounds indicated something that she didn't want to yet accept. Yoda told Ahsoka that Obi-Wan was going to find Anakin. Ahsoka said she knew where Anakin was. Yoda looked at the two of them. He thought for a moment. He decided the odds would be better if Obi-Wan had assistance. Also, Yoda didn't want to stress about Ahsoka being in a fight against Sidious. While Yoda had no reason to trust Maul, he also didn't care if Maul died, so Yoda could be completely locked in against Sidious and not worry about Maul potentially dying. If Ahsoka or Obi-Wan were here, then that would be a different story. Yoda told Ahsoka to go to Obi-Wan, and she bowed and ran in the opposite direction. Maul felt so much confidence with Yoda here. Sure, it was a little worrisome because he knew that if it came to it, Yoda wouldn't protect him from Sidious. Yoda looked at Maul and told him to follow his lead. Ahsoka, on the other hand, found herself a Republic shuttle and departed for the Mustafar system. Yoda and Maul walked into the Chancellor's office. Maul followed behind Yoda and watched as the two royal guards got thrown into the walls. Sidious was obviously surprised that Yoda had survived, but why was Maul with them? What a weird combination, but this was a threat and he wasn't having any of it. Sidious rose to his feet. Maul had seen this move a dozen times before and ignited his lightsaber, spinning the blade around and putting it in front of Yoda before lightning from Sidious's fingers hit the Grand Master. Yoda hadn't seen it coming, but this clearly defined that they were allies now. How permanent was it? Who knew? But Yoda was ready. His lightsaber ignited and Mas Amedda panicked. He had to get out of the room, but before he could, he was cut down. Thankfully, Yoda wasn't interested, but Maul needed something to feed off of. He lifted Mas Amedda into the air, choking him to death. Sidious leapt across the room to be met by Yoda. The three of them collectively engaged, and Maul realized that Ahsoka wouldn't have been enough, just like Savage wasn't enough. The speed and ferocity used by both avatars were terrifying. The sheer power reminded Maul of Mother Talzin. As they moved about, Maul was able to use the strength of Yoda to throw Sidious off balance. Sidious lost the fight already to a Jedi, and he wasn't about to repeat the same mistake again. Ahsoka, on the other hand, landed at the facilities at Mustafar. She ran out and found Padme on the ground. C-3PO was pushing out a small little stretcher to put her onto and get inside the ship. R2 was right next to 3PO, trying to figure out what was happening. Ahsoka looked across as she landed and saw Anakin's starship, though something caught her eye, which was the flashing blades on the far side of the facility. Ahsoka ran out of the shuttle and made sure Padme was okay, and she was. She asked the two of them where they were supposed to go, and 3PO relayed that he wasn't sure. Ahsoka thought quickly and told them to go to Polis Massa. She told R2 to take Anakin's ship, and the droids listened intently. Ahsoka started running. She made her way across the riverbanks and saw Obi-Wan dismount from a small platform before turning back and yelling out at Anakin. Though both of them were distracted when Padme's ship lifted off into the air. Obi-Wan felt Ahsoka's presence and he turned over. Anakin hadn't picked up on it. Obi-Wan then saw Anakin's ship leave the landing zone too. He knew without Ahsoka saying a word what she was doing. It was much better alternative than cutting off Anakin's legs and leaving him for dead. Obi-Wan didn't even extinguish his lightsaber, he just started running. Anakin was so confused about the two ships flying away that he was too distracted to notice Obi-Wan disappearing. The reason Anakin locked onto this was because of Padme's ship. Did she just get up and abandon him? Also, who's flying his personal ship? Did R2 ditch him as well? Wait, where'd Obi-Wan go? Kenobi and Ahsoka hauled themselves back into the Jedi shuttle. All they could hear as they escaped was Anakin yelling Obi-Wan's name aloud. Anakin also had no reason to believe that she would be here, so when he saw the Republic shuttle lift off from the surface of the platform, he raged. He was stuck here on Mustafar, and no one was coming to get him. Inside of the Senate building, Maul and Yoda were using each other to their advantage. Instead of climbing out into the Senate arena, they went down the hallways and were fighting in the corridors of the Senate building. Maul was fighting at the best he'd ever done. His skill wasn't something to mock, but Palpatine was making short work of him. Without Yoda, this would be over as fast as it was with Savage and Maul. Yoda used the Force to launch Palpatine from his feet. Yoda and Maul stood side by side and twirled their lightsabers together before moving in. Maul launched himself forward but was sidestepped, as Sidious soloed Yoda and thrusted his blade forward trying to hit the mark. Each attempt was a failure, but he was able to disarm Yoda from the entire battle. Sidious kicked Yoda in the stomach before shooting electricity into his face and throwing him from his feet. Sidious turned back and saw Maul rise to his feet. He wasn't exactly ready to take Palpatine on by himself. Maul looked to his right and saw Yoda on the ground. Maul reached for his lightsaber, but electricity rang out from Sidious's fingers. Time stopped for Darth Maul. He'd been in this very position before, several times in his life actually. For Maul, he looked at the lightning coming towards him and he remembered the life of a boy who was tortured and bred into a monster. He flashed from that moment to the death of his brother before his very own eyes and the torture he faced through Palpatine afterwards. Maul ended up right where he started, struggling against the likes of his torturous master. He came back to the moment as his body flinched. Before he could be hit by the lightning, it was stopped. Yoda stood in front of Maul, using his hands to take in the lightning. The power was too incredible. Yoda could only hold so much of it for so long. Maul saw his moment. His lightsaber ignited and he sped around the side of Yoda and leapt forward. Sidious quickly pulled his lightsaber and defended himself. Maul spun the blade before flipping over a strike made by Sidious. Yoda was right behind Maul. The duo caught Palpatine in a bind. Sidious stumbled backwards as he caught a strike made by Yoda until his knee fell out from under him. Maul then used all of his physical strength and lobbed his fist into Palpatine's head before spinning his blade across and striking again, cutting across Sidious's shoulder. The Dark Lord fell down and Yoda moved in for the final kill. It was blocked, and Yoda propelled himself upwards, giving Sidious a chance to strike at the Grand Master. But it was all stopped when the words, "This is for Savage," whispered out of Maul's mouth, and his blade slid right into Palpatine's chest. He was dead, but they weren't out of the clear. A number of clone troopers came barreling down the hallway. Yoda looked at Maul. There was a bond here. This wasn't just a temporary alliance. They were, for a short moment, brothers in arms. Maul and Yoda moved at the same speed, throwing the Force forward and launching the Coruscant Guard. The two of them protected each other as they made their desperate escape from the side of the building, before joining Bail Organa on his trip to Polis Massa. Things were kind of weird. Not for nothing, Maul was still a Sith in Yoda's eyes. Rightly so. Maul, up until today, was actively trying to kill Jedi, especially Kenobi. And if Obi-Wan survived his duel with Skywalker, then there would perhaps be some issues when the two of them came face to face. Yoda wasn't at all concerned about Kenobi, it was more so Maul. He was the one who could do something erratic. While Yoda didn't know Maul personally or never even interacted with him, he was being especially still. Sith weren't known for their stillness. This also wasn't physically still. Maul's presence in the Force was still. There was no movement. Maul sat in solitude inside the Tantive form. He had his eyes closed, and all of his memories from childhood to now flashed up in front of his eyes. For Maul, something incredible happened. He was free. He broke out of the curse. Did this mean he was instantly a good guy? No. But something within him changed, and despite him being the one who killed Sidious, a large part of it came from Yoda. There was a moment. Yoda had the jump on Sidious, and yet he chose to risk his life for Maul. He saved him. Sure, Sidious would have died in the end, but Maul would have been hurt or injured, and he wasn't. Maul knew he never had a choice. Whether he was brought to the Jedi or the Sith, he would have never had a choice. But perhaps the Jedi were onto something. Perhaps without the Jedi or the Sith remaining in the galaxy, the choice was his. If Ahsoka and Kenobi beat Skywalker, then he would be the last Sith. And while power was an objective for so long, he didn't know if he still lusted it. His stillness of heart confused him because he never felt such peace before. He never shared the experience of stillness and calmness. He felt like for the first time ever that for Savage, he had peace in his death. He felt like there was a horizon worth obtaining. Maul rose from his silence and talked to the Grand Master. First, it was a thanks, but Yoda dismissed it, telling him that there was no need for thanks. Maul told Yoda that he had a question though. The aging Grand Master nodded his head and suggested that Maul ask away. Maul stuttered over his words, but his question slipped out in the form of, why was the peace here? Yoda understood, and he told Maul that he'd broken free from his chains. He was free. What he did with his freedom was up to him. He could continue a legacy of carnage, or he could break off and become who he wanted to be. But Maul didn't know. He didn't know who he was. Yoda smiled with a chuckle and told Maul that if he trusted the Force, he'd find the answers he was looking for. When they arrived at Polis Massa, Maul sat quietly inside the Corellian Corvette. Eventually, he mustered up the courage to walk down the ramp and into the facilities. Yoda, Obi-Wan, and Ahsoka were all talking with each other. When Maul rounded the corner, he looked at the three of them. He took it in for a moment. He looked at Kenobi. There was so much bad blood in their history, and Maul, despite losing his legs to Kenobi, could still walk. Obi-Wan could never have Satine back, and despite him being a Jedi, there was no Order left. He could seek revenge if he wanted, and with the purge having happened, Obi-Wan could have had her without having to lead the Order. And now, he couldn't. Ahsoka's master was dead, at least that's what it seemed, and Yoda's order was in shambles. This is all that was left of the Jedi Order, and he thought, well, he could continue the legacy of the Sith, or he could let it go and let it die. So much of his upbringing tortured him into making the wrong decisions. He for the first time felt like he could make the right one, and so, as the two Jedi put their hands on their belts, Maul took his lightsaber off of his and dropped it to the ground. He slid it over towards the Jedi and told them, the Sith are dead. The Jedi looked on in confusion. Yoda could feel it. He knew. But Kenobi and Ahsoka, they didn't. Maul told them that he was sorry for their loss of the Order. He then looked at Obi-Wan. The two of them looked at each other silently. Obi-Wan had lost so much, and so much of it was due to Maul. Obi-Wan lost Qui-Gon, Satine, his student, and his Order, two of which were because of Maul. Maul's breath stopped, and he trembled for a second. He said Obi-Wan's name, and told him specifically that he was sorry. For all of it. Obi-Wan nodded his head. He didn't have the words to say, he just nodded. There was an awkwardness between the four of them, but Obi-Wan dismissed himself as he went to Padme's side, where she gave birth to twins, Luke and Leia, and she survived. It was a healthy birth, and she was okay. Maul sat outside on a ramp of a ship. He didn't know where to go, but eventually Obi-Wan walked out and joined him. Obi-Wan and Maul sat right next to each other in silence. Kenobi told Maul that he was very strong for resisting. He said that whatever Maul's path was, he had done a great service to the galaxy. Maul simply smiled, and then He thought for a moment before asking Obi-Wan if he could ever be forgiven. Obi-Wan looked down the ramp and sat in silence. He told Maul that he was already forgiven. He remembered holding Satine and Qui-Gon in their final moments of life, Qui-Gon giving his final instruction, an instruction that Obi-Wan felt he failed, and Satine giving her final love, a love she had had since the first day they met. Obi-Wan patted Maul on the shoulder and repeated the statement after releasing a heavy breath. Maul asked Obi-Wan how. How could he forgive him? Obi-Wan looked over at Maul and told him that he could teach him. Maul told Obi-Wan that he'd be willing to learn if that was alright. Obi-Wan nodded his head, though the four of them had to go and pick someone up. Anakin had cooled off, well, kinda. He was still on Mustafar, but he was alone at least. He was abandoned. Not for nothing, he did it to himself, but he was still alone. When Bail Organa's ship arrived, Yoda, Obi-Wan, Ahsoka, and Maul showed up. Of course, Anakin was confused as to why Maul was here, but that's okay, whatever. The Jedi didn't present themselves as a threat. They just told him that it was time to stop. Anakin didn't know what to do anymore. He was so confused, until Obi-Wan stepped out and told him that Padme was alright. She had given birth and the twins were okay. Anakin slid to his knees. Tears slipped from his eyes and he asked Obi-Wan if... He stuttered. If he did all that for a lie. Obi-Wan really had to use his patience here because he would love to call Anakin out on his foolishness. But this was not that time. It was time to forgive. Not forget, but forgive. Obi-Wan walked over to Anakin's side and knelt down next to him and helped him up. Maul was astonished at Obi-Wan's compassion. Anakin would be given the opportunity to see his wife and their children, but there was an obvious discrepancy between the husband and wife. She loved them to death, but they needed to work on them. While Anakin's actions weren't illegal, they were morally wrong, and for a mother, it wasn't exactly the type of action she wanted around her kids. You know, killing kids for funsies isn't super fun. Padme, Luke, and Leia would return to Coruscant with Ahsoka. Padme needed to help fix the Senate, and she wanted someone with the kids who wasn't a kid killer. Yoda and Anakin went off on their own excursion to Ahch-To, where Yoda would train Anakin in a way that he needed to correct what had been done to him. Obi-Wan and Maul, on the other hand, went out to the galaxy to gather up survivors of the Purge. This wasn't Maul becoming a Jedi, it was Maul learning how to forgive and move on. Obi-Wan was probably the perfect Jedi for this. Their shared loss and their shared torture through life made them so much more relatable than anyone else could have been. The Empire itself was limping. While the Separatists were given an all-shut-down command and the Separatist Council were slaughtered by Skywalker, the Senate was struggling. Padme returned and through her peers was able to garner the support to become the interim Chancellor, or as Palpatine called it, Emperor. She, using all the power of the role, reversed everything. Got everything she wanted to get done, and then completely destroyed the role that Palpatine spent 13 years constructing into what it was now. Ahsoka was staying with Padme, but she was also adventuring out on her own. She got to enjoy the upper-class lifestyle thanks to Padme. Their relationship grew exponentially because they were constantly with each other, and Padme made sure Ahsoka was taken care of as well, just for helping her with the kids. The reinstated Republic removed all the inhibitor chips from the clones, and the Clone Wars came to an end, and with the help of Senator Chuchi, the clones were able to be taken care of. Anakin on Ahch-To learned everything he needed to. Yoda brought him here so that he could understand what his actions had done. He could not get revenge on Anakin as he was a Jedi. Yoda was here to set Anakin on the correct path, and Anakin's pain from what he had done caused him to go back on his terrible actions. He regretted everything so much, and he couldn't live with it. It haunted him unlike anything else. What was done, and Yoda's instruction gave Anakin a new hope for his own future, though the two of them inevitably spent about a full year on Ahch-To, secluded. When Anakin and Yoda returned to Coruscant, Anakin and Padme reunited. It was a hard year for the two of them, but when they came back together, they had a chance to talk about what they needed to do for each other. Of course, Anakin was sad about missing out on the first year of Luke and Leia's lives, but he knew that he wanted to be the best version of himself for their future. He needed to have done that internal work before they were born, but better now than never. Anakin was astonished to see how much the Republic was able to get done under Padme's guidance. The Republic was doing everything it should have been doing for centuries beforehand. Obi-Wan and Maul, on the other hand, connected with each other. Their shared losses and survival of the Purge and fall of the Republic allowed the two of them to build a bond that was unforeseeable nearly a year beforehand. With each other, they were able to find and save countless lost younglings and Padawans. A brotherhood formed between the two of them, and they even killed a Grand Inquisitor together. A new Jedi Order was given a chance to breathe, thanks to Professor Huyang. He'd been collecting these younglings and Padawans sent his way from Kenobi and Maul. He was actively preparing space for them inside of his old Republic cruiser. Maul had also learned, through his own work, to heal his crystals, and he also exposed Crimson Dawn to the Republic so they could hunt down the pirates and destroy them. When Yoda returned, he found that about 50 of the surviving Jedi had been found. There were 100 total spread out across the galaxy, but the rest hadn't been found yet. Among the survivors were Caleb Doom, Reva, Cal Kestis, and Nari. The Order had fallen so far, but on the bright side, it was a savable Order. Upon Yoda's return, he learned that there was a new member to the Order, and his name was Maul. He decided after a year that he wanted to choose his life, and he didn't want any other life, and he was welcome into the Jedi Order. Ahsoka would leave Coruscant shortly after Anakin's return. Not that she didn't want to be around him, she just wanted Padme and Anakin to have time to themselves to continue building upon their relationship. Ahsoka returned to Professor Huyang's vessel and decided that she didn't want to be a nomad. Despite her odds with the Jedi Order and the Code, she believed her place was with the Jedi for the time being. For now, she would return as a Jedi Knight. The Order would situate themselves on Tython, where they would reorganize their former temple and rebuild everything that was lost. Over the months and eventually years, the rest of the survivors would join up with the Jedi on Tython. Their order would be around 120 large, the newest members aside from Ahsoka and Maul being infants. Anakin and Padme would rekindle and save their relationship as Anakin made amends with his past and bettered himself in the present. When Luke and Leia were 8 years old, Anakin and Padme would move off-world to the planet of Naboo to start a life of peace. They would also welcome in a new child, an Astrid Jyn Skywalker, their last. Anakin would visit the Jedi on Tython and be apologetic for what had happened, but the Jedi were able to forgive. Kenobi served on the High Council as a Master of the Order, and by his side was Jedi Master Maul. He had taken on Caleb Doom as his student, while Kenobi took on Cal Kestis as his own. It may have been an order forged by trauma, but it, like some of the best members, were able to grow beyond what tragedy beset their past. And that, my friends, is our story. Again, special thanks to Galvin Gaming, Tristan, Darth Revan, Pimp Daddy Bane, The Last Jedi, Apollo, WeeWoo670, Riri700, Darth Nox, The Eternal Padawan, Jedi Sloth, Mr. Yeet Gamer, Mad Matty Studios, Anakin003, Fordo's Legacy Star Wars, Lemon Knight, Rex the Wolf, The Man with Three First Names, Dark Saint 46, Baron Joshua, and Lord Deadwing for supporting the channel. Check out the Patreon if you want to support me in other ways. This list can get a lot longer, and there's a lot of cool things that are on there. I try to update things. Lots of cool thumbnails, that's for sure. Anyways, if you liked the video, smash the like button. This was fun. This has actually been a video that's been sitting on my desktop for about a year. I've had this thumbnail since probably last November, and I haven't had the story down, and I'm so glad I waited because I think what we have here is beautiful. I think it's beautiful and unique, and it allows the characters to have room to breathe in their own respective way that allows them to naturally progress as characters, which is something I really like. I think the Maul arc is really cool, and I think Maul, not for nothing, is the main character of this video, which is something I didn't intend when I went into it, but it just kind of worked out that way. But yeah, this was fun. The Yoda and Maul dynamic, that was cool. The Ahsoka and Obi-Wan dynamic, I thought that was kind of cool. But like having Yoda fight with Maul was like, I don't know, I thought that was kind of cool. And then having the two of them rekindle, or Obi-Wan and Maul have like a friendship moment, a bromance moment, I like that. I don't know, I thought that was cool. Anyways, I hope you all enjoyed. I love you all, spread the love, and always remember, my friends, may the Force be with you.